Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take your vast stack of sources, articles, and research and really try to extract the surprising insights that cut through the noise.
Exactly.
Today, we aren't just summarizing information, we are, in a way, joining a quest. We're strapping on our boots, grabbing our metaphorical scallop shells for a journey that is, well, it's equal parts ancient spiritual pilgrimage, esoteric military history, and an incredibly structured, demanding self-help boot camp.
That's a perfect way to put it, a boot camp.
Hmm.
Our sources detail this highly structured journey of a man who was already, initiated into a secret teaching, what they call the tradition.
Right.
But he's immediately humbled. He's forced to walk the ancient road to Santiago.
Ow.
And this quest, it isn't about finding faith in the usual sense.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming a symbol of achieved personal power, his sword, after a devastating public and humiliating failure.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit, because the stakes here are so high from the very first moment.
Yep.
Our protagonist, he was already considered a magus, a master of these esoteric arts. He had ascended the hierarchy and was about to be presented with the ultimate symbol of his status, a new sword.
And it's described in detail. Indestructible steel and wood, a black and red hilt, black scabbard. This should have been his coronation.
The end of the journey. Instead, it was this explosive new beginning.
The failure described in the sources it's startling. It's so sudden and so raw, so physical. As his hands eagerly reach out to take the scabbard, the master who's conferring the sword doesn't just, say no.
He doesn't just rebuke him.
No. He steps forward and literally crushes the protagonist's outstretched fingers under his foot.
Wow.
It was an immediate, painful, absolute physical stop sign.
That is brutal. And for a man who has dedicated his life to achieving this exact moment, that rejection must have been catastrophic.
Oh, completely.
So what was the master's verdict? What justified such a shocking display of force?
The master was very, very clear. The protagonist stumbled because of two things, avidity and pride.
Avidity, so like a greedy desire for it.
Exactly. An intense, almost grasping, greedy desire. And then pride, the arrogance that comes with believing that this power he'd achieved was somehow exclusive to him.
I see.
The master declared that the power he thought he'd earned was, and this is a quote, worthless, because it is a power that is shared by all.
So if we translate that for the listener, this isn't just about him being too confident in his abilities. It's really about the spirit, the motivation behind why he wanted the reward.
Precisely.
He saw the sword as an object of status, something that set him apart from everyone else.
Yes, his motivation was personal acquisition, not, universal application. The core philosophy of this tradition, as the master emphasizes, is that this path is not for the chosen few, not for the magus elite.
It's everyone's road.
It's everyone's road. And so the protagonist was forced to seek his sword again. But this time, he had to find it among the simple people, the everyday pilgrims on the physical Camino itself.
The ultimate spiritual demotion. It's fascinating. His punishment for intellectual arrogance wasn't some new, complex, magical exercise.
No, not at all.
It was 7 months of just agonizing doubt, followed by this strenuous, grounded, real-world pilgrimage, guided by a man who seemed to have absolutely no patience for his previous esoteric accomplishments.
And that just sets the tone perfectly. It's a quest that's going to be defined by mandatory humility and practical physical application from here on out.
Okay, so let's establish the stage for this transformation. The Camino de Santiago itself.
Before we jump into the practices, you have to understand the road. Geographically, historically, this thing is immense. It's often called the Milky Way because ancient pilgrims would literally use the galaxy to navigate westward.
That's incredible.
And by the first millennium, it stood as one of 3 essential sacred Christian routes. You had Rome, the road to the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, and this.
And the destination, Santiago de Compostela, is just drenched in layers of meaning. Compostela itself, it literally means star field.
Right, supposedly named for the brilliant star a shepherd saw over the remains of the Apostle James. So you immediately have this connection between the celestial, the star, and the earthly, the pilgrimage path.
The route itself, the one the protagonist walks, is about 700 kilometers from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And it's largely the same path that was detailed in the 12th century Codex Calixtinus.
Which was, it was essentially the world's first travel guide for pilgrims.
Really?
Yeah, Book 5, written by a French priest, Aymeric Picot. It detailed everything from which wells were safe to drink from to which local peoples were too barbarous to trust. It's a foundational document for the European experience.
It's fascinating, though, how quickly that spiritual quest got integrated into real-world power
Oh,
politics.
immediately.
This route wasn't just some religious folklore. Spain leveraged the legend of St. James as this powerful symbol, Santiago Matamoros, or St. James the Moor Slayer, in their centuries-long struggle against the invading Moors.
It became a huge rallying cry. The Camino was intrinsically linked to the defense of the kingdom. And as the pilgrimage grew, so did the protective organizations. The militant religious orders that sprang up, like the eventual Order of Santiago the Sword,
They became a real political threat, didn't they?
a huge threat. They amassed so much wealth and so many armies that they posed a genuine challenge to the Catholic nobility in the Middle Ages.
So you have this physical road that's built on finding a humble star over an apostle's remains, but at the same time, it's a route steeped in militancy, conquest, and power struggles.
It's the perfect
The
contrast.
protagonist, seeking a symbol of power, the sword, on this very same path, is immediately forced to confront the difference between that external militant conquest and an internal humble achievement.
And this modern quest, it begins with a preparation ritual that feels straight out of that history. The protagonist meets a woman, Adele Lourdes, a local figure, who provides the symbolic articles for a pilgrim.
Okay, so what were these symbolic protections? How do they frame the journey psychologically?
She gives him three things. First, the hat, which is meant to protect him from the sun and symbolically from evil thoughts.
Right.
Then the cape to protect from the rain and symbolically from evil words.
And the last one.
The gourd. For water, yes, but it also protects from enemies and evil deeds. These are not just gear, they're active metaphors. She's telling him that the dangers on the road out there are mirrored by the dangers inside his own mind.
After this, he finally meets his guide, Petrus.
Yes, the sources say Petrus is an Italian industrial designer who protects his modern identity fiercely. He's calm, but incredibly demanding, and he immediately establishes that this is not going to be an easy ride.
And their first real test comes almost immediately.
Right away. They encounter a figure Petrus later identifies as the Gypsy, a manifestation of the protagonist's personal devil, or maybe more accurately, his personal messenger.
So this messenger challenges him.
He does. He urges him to turn back, give up the hard road, and in exchange he'll get immediate comfort and reward. It's that classic test of resolve.
And if he gives in, the whole journey is over right there. He has to recite the correct philosophical response from the tradition.
And the response is just beautiful. It's
Yeah.
the ship is safest when it's in port, but that's not what ships were built for. It's such an elegant summary of the entire philosophy. Comfort is stasis. Stasis is the enemy of purpose. A life lived only for safety is a life that fails to fulfill its design.
And that sets us up perfectly for the three tenets of true wisdom, the core philosophy that underpins all the RAM practices.
This is the heart of the tradition, adapted for everyone. First, true wisdom must involve agape, what Petrus initially just calls the love that consumes. We'll dive much deeper into that later.
Okay, and the second tenet, this links directly back to that sword he's looking for.
It does. It must have practical application in daily life. Petrus uses this stunning metaphor. If wisdom isn't used constantly, it deteriorates, like a sword that is never
It
used.
just becomes a rust-eaten relic.
Exactly. The knowledge has to be integrated into physical daily action.
And the third tenet is the ultimate correction for his initial failure, for his pride.
That's right. True wisdom must be a path that can be followed by anyone, the common people. If this knowledge was restricted only to the wealthy or the elite, it would be a divine injustice.
So the Camino itself is the proof of that.
The road itself is the tangible proof that the path to this power is universally accessible if you're willing to do the work. This frames all the RAM practices not as mystical secrets, but as disciplined, accessible tools for growth.
All right, so moving into part two, we get into the physical and psychological meat of this journey. The RAM practices. These are rigorous exercises designed to strip away his old identity.
And you have to remember, after 7 months of agonizing over his failure, he is psychologically a prisoner of the past. He's dragging that failure with him every step.
Which is why the very first RAM practice is all about a total psychological and spiritual rebirth.
This is RAM Practice 1, the seed exercise.
This one sounds intensely physical. It demands full commitment, not just, intellectual observation.
It has to be done for 7 consecutive days, always at the same time, to force a complete reboot. The person kneels, then curls into a fetal position, visualizing themselves as a tiny, dormant seed buried deep in the warm, dark earth.
And the key is overcoming that inertia, right? The comfort of just staying dormant.
Exactly. The process is about slowly moving, rising against this perceived force of the earth, pushing down, fighting that desire to stay safe. You visualize breaking through the surface, standing up like a growing shoot, stretching your arms to the sun.
But the physical tension has to be real. The source material says it must be increased more and more until it becomes painful, unbearable.
Right, and it culminates in a final, painful release and a scream. That scream is the catharsis. It's the moment the old self is supposedly shed. It's a powerful metaphor for overcoming self-sabotage. Growth is uncomfortable, often painful.
And yet, our protagonist, the intellectual magus, he immediately falls into the trap of overthinking it.
Of course he does.
He gets so focused on the feeling of the exercise, he loses the objective.
On the seventh day, Petrus catches him in this ecstatic trance. He slaps him, and he's furious. He shouts, "Don't lose sight of your objective. Don't forget that you still have a great deal to learn before you find your sword."
So he was fascinated by the ecstasy, but the beautiful feeling of becoming a tree, and he forgot the goal was the sword.
Yes, the symbol of applied purpose, not the spiritual high. It's a fantastic distinction. So many people chase spiritual practices just for the feeling, the bliss, and that becomes its own kind of avidity. They seek the state rather than the practical outcome the state enables.
And that failure leads directly into the second big lesson, time and movement.
Yeah, this is a great reveal. Petrus tells him that despite the intense trek through the Pyrenees, climbing mountains for 6 days, they only covered 17 kilometers.
They were just going back and forth over the same ground.
Over and over. The protagonist was so focused on the goal, Santiago, way off in the distance, that he completely failed to pay attention to the process of moving. He never even noticed.
Which is why they introduced RAM practice 2, the speed exercise. It's a correction for that goal obsession.
The purpose is to change how you do routine things and to force the realization that it is we who determine how quickly time passes.
These steps are so simple.
Deceptively simple. Walk for 20 minutes at half your normal speed. It forces your attention away from the destination and onto the tiny details around you, the pebbles, the light, your own breathing.
And the more he looked at his watch during this, the slower time passed.
Confirming Petrus's point, time is elastic. It's determined by our engagement with the present, not the clock.
So if the first two practices correct goal obsession and past inertia, the next ones really focus on this internal psychological warfare.
What Petrus calls the good fight, which he defines as the one fought in the name of our dreams.
And he lays out the symptoms of killing one's dreams, 3 types of self-inflicted wounds that sabotage us.
The first is the lack of time. People who complain they're too busy, too tired, they're often just afraid to fight for what they really want. The lack of time is just an excuse for inaction.
The second symptom is certainties. This is when someone settles into a kind of moral superiority, thinking they're wise for asking so little of life.
They're substituting ambition with resignation, and they're calling it maturity when it's really just avoiding the struggle.
And the third one is the most deceptive.
Right.
Peace.
Right. When life becomes a stagnant Sunday afternoon, a person has given up on their deepest dreams. They've mistaken resignation for wisdom. Petrus calls it the death of the soul.
To combat this self-cruelty, Petrus introduces a really controversial technique. RAM Practice 3, the cruelty exercise. I have to say, it's a bit jarring.
It is. The practice involves digging a fingernail into your thumb whenever a cruel thought, negative self-talk, regret, anxiety arises until the thought goes away.
It sounds like literal self-harm as a tool. Why is this necessary?
It's a necessary critique, and it does sound extreme. But within the tradition's framework, it's a bit like cognitive behavioral therapy, but with a physical jolt. That self-cruelty, the anxiety, it's already an invisible psychological wound. This practice just substitutes a small, conscious, physical pain for that debilitating, unconscious mental pain.
So it forces instant mindfulness. You're physically interrupting the self-betrayal.
Exactly. It creates a powerful, immediate association. Negative thought equals a physical consequence. It makes the mind stop its damaging loop by forcing it to focus on the physical reality of the present moment. It's an extreme discipline for sure.
But it's designed to establish control.
To teach him that his mind is an instrument he must command, not a master he must obey.
Once he has some command of his internal dialogue, he moves on to communicating with his subconscious power, his personal devil.
Right. RAM Practice 4. The messenger ritual. This is where the esoteric really meets the psychological. The figure, who the protagonist eventually learns is named Astrain, is his personal devil, or his subconscious force.
The engine of his material drive and practical cunning.
Exactly. The ritual itself is deeply symbolic. He sits, relaxes, and conjures two billows of fire, one on the right for the subconscious, the strain's domain, and one on the left for the lamb's power, the higher protective self, the angel.
And the messenger appears between them, but the conversation has to be strictly about practical, material problems.
Yes, this isn't for discussing spiritual transcendence. This is for directing that raw, goal-oriented energy of the subconscious toward daily challenges.
Hmm.
And crucially, the name Estrain must be learned telepathically and kept absolutely secret.
Because knowing the name gives him power over it.
It ensures the magus remains the master of the tool. And Petrus gives a great analogy here. The angel is your armor. It protects you unconditionally.
Spiritual security.
Right. But the messenger, Estrain, is your sword. A powerful tool for the material world, capable of great success, but also inherently dangerous. You can drop it, it can injure a friend, or be turned against you if you don't wield it with immense discipline.
The symbolism is just layering perfectly now. The quest for the literal sword is the quest to master a strain, the directed power of his subconscious.
But that raw power has to be balanced by something non-logical,
By intuition.
which is the focus of RAM Practice 5, the water exercise. The goal is to build a non-logical, fluid relationship with the universe, to counteract that intellectual rigidity that caused his fall in the first place.
Wait, just playing with water. That's the key to intuition. That seems absurdly simple compared to this screaming of the seed exercise or the fire of the messenger ritual.
It is absurd, and that is exactly the point. The practice is to make a puddle on a smooth surface and just play with the water for 10 minutes. No commitment, no seeking a specific image. You can't control water easily, and the logical mind just struggles with such a simple, purposeless activity.
For an intellectual like him, the lack of purpose and structure would be incredibly frustrating. He's trained his whole life to find the meaning.
And here he's told to let meaning go. The goal is to stop the mind from working, to relax the logical defenses. It's about discovering the soul's secret code, a non-logical language for communicating with the world that relies on feeling, not thought.
So with discipline, internal control, and fluidity established, Petrus finally turns to the philosophical anchor of the whole tradition, agape.
Right. And to understand this consuming love, he contrasts it with the two other Greek concepts we're more familiar with, eros and philos.
So eros we usually think of as romantic or sexual love.
And it is, but it's dual-natured. The sources say it has two faces. On the one hand, it's ennobling. It inspires two people to build a life together. But its destructive face comes out when one partner feels robbed of their freedom or their ambition by the relationship.
It can become a source of intense hatred.
Exactly, if it's not balanced. And philos, or friendship, is the ballast that stabilizes eros.
So it's the companionable bond, the trust that keeps a couple anchored when the initial fire of eros cools down a bit.
Right. Petrus himself expresses philos toward the protagonist. But the highest form is agape, the love that consumes. And Petrus says you can't really explain it. You have to experience it.
So how does the tradition define its manifestations? How does one experience it?
He describes two primary forms. The first is the total overwhelming love you see in, like, the hermit saints, the monk Alfonso, who he meets later. This love leads to isolation because everything else, wealth, status, it all just pales in comparison.
So they live consumed by this divine fire, and because of that intensity, they allegedly, shake the stars and change history?
Through sheer spiritual force, yes. That's agape in its purest, most transcendent form. But the second manifestation, the one accessible to the common pilgrim, is enthusiasm.
That's a powerful connection. For the ancients, enthusiasm literally meant ontheos, or having God within.
Precisely. So enthusiasm in this context is the practical, directed application of agape.
Is agape pointed at a specific idea or purpose?
Yes. When you truly believe in and love what you're doing, from the heart, enthusiasm gives you the ability to make the right decisions instinctively. It provides this inner serenity because it's based on unshakable faith in your purpose.
It sounds like that vibrant, almost impossible energy you see in successful creators or leaders who are completely devoted to their craft.
It's the source of childlike wonder, the energy that ensures the sword will be used well. But Petrus warns that people lose this enthusiasm constantly.
How does that happen? How can this divine fire be extinguished?
Through the small, unavoidable defeats in the good fight, instead of getting back up, people let the small defeats pile up, They get bored, they start blaming the world for their lack of progress. Petrus even admits his earlier rage at a rude waiter was because he saw the boy's enthusiasm draining away like the blood that runs from wrists that have been slashed.
Yeah.
He saw that spiritual death in action.
So to combat this, they practice RAM Practice 6, the blue sphere exercise, the ritual of agape.
This is designed to actively arouse that energy. It requires relaxation and singing a childhood song softly. That song is the anchor. It recaptures the memory of childlike faith before adulthood set in.
Then you imagine your heart growing, filling the room, the world, with an intense, shining blue light.
And this light draws in the presence of your childhood saints or heroes, those figures who first gave you faith. The light spreads outwards, enveloping the entire world in an immense blue sphere.
It's powerful that Petrus insists on sharing this exercise. He does it with the protagonist and the monk Alfonso.
Yes, he states clearly that agape in this form is communal. It reinforces the idea that this powerful love is not just a personal experience, but a shared energy source, a direct correction to the protagonist's initial prideful isolation.
Okay, we're moving now to the final trials. With discipline, intuition, and agape established, he's ready to face the deepest barrier, the fear of death.
This is RAM Practice 7, the buried alive exercise.
And this is maybe the most intense test of all.
It is, and it's only performed once. The purpose is to face the terror of death directly, viscerally, not philosophically. The steps are intense. You lie down, cross your arms in the posture of death, and visualize being buried alive.
Feeling the earth on the lid, sensing the darkness.
The visualization has to become so real that the terror is unbearable. That's when the transition happens. You tense every muscle in a desperate struggle to escape, culminating in this total movement to throw the coffin aside and scream.
An enforced physical rebirth through confronting absolute terror.
And the result for the protagonist was transformative. He realized death wasn't a ghoul, but a friend and counselor.
And what counsel did death offer him?
That he would never again allow him to put off until tomorrow what should be enjoyed today. Death becomes the ultimate motivator, protecting him from the greatest sin of all, regret.
If you know you will die, you must act now.
Without delay. Fight the good fight without reservation.
Following this internal confrontation, he has to face his final external enemy. The abandoned town of Fonspadon and Legion, the savage black dog that attacked him before.
And Petrus vanishes. He forces the protagonist to confront this manifestation of fear and chaos completely alone.
The stakes are clear if he runs.
The fear will haunt him for the rest of his life. The fight is immediate and the dog tears his leg. The temptation from estraying his messenger is loud and clear. Give up. Go home. You're hurt.
But then during a brief distraction from a shepherd, a strain whispers the key insight.
Yes. To fight the dog, you must use the dog's own weapons.
This is the moment of divine madness.
Absolute command over the subconscious. To conquer Legion, he has to transform. He bares his teeth, he growls, he attacks with his own nails and teeth, meeting animal fury with his own disciplined animalistic will.
He wrestles the dog to the ground. It's a victory, but a grotesque one.
And when Petrus reappears, his reaction is deliberately anticlimactic. He praises the beauty of the victory, but condemns the timing. Classic Petrus. He criticizes the failure of anticipation. What good is a sword if you don't know where you are going to run into your enemy? The enemy strikes where we are most confident. He failed to predict the encounter.
This introduces the final necessary tool for a master: predictive intuition and strategic listening. RAM Practice 8.
The listening exercise. The objective is simple, but so difficult. To hear the past, present, and future in sounds, to make the right strategic decisions. You close your eyes, concentrate on all sounds as a single orchestra, then slowly separate and focus on each sound individually.
And this works best once the messenger's voice, a strain, is known.
Right, because it provides a baseline. You can separate the sound of your subconscious tool from the noise of the external world. It lets you hear the advice that life offers us all the time.
But the ultimate test of all this wisdom isn't against an enemy, but against his guide, Petrus, in the test of obedience.
Yes. Severely wounded from the dogfight, the protagonist is ordered by a newly harsh Petrus to do something impossible. Manually lift a massive toppled cross.
He sees Petrus as an oppressor, a monster. But he obeys, remembering the trust they've built. Brute force is impossible.
So it forces him to apply his spiritual intelligence. He remembers this thing called the shadow exercise principle.
Right, which states that the wrong answer will indicate the right one.
Exactly. If brute force is the obvious but impossible solution, the wrong answer, then the correct solution must be its inverse.
And his solution is this brilliant synthesis, combining the physical posture of the seat exercise with the purpose of lifting the cross.
He lies on his back beneath the cross, balances it on his spine, and then, using that slow, total body rising motion from the seat exercise, the act of rebirth, he rises, pushing the massive cross upright.
He achieves the impossible by applying his internal lesson to the external world.
The cross rises, and Petrus, who had seemed to be asleep, just wakes up, says, "Very good," and starts walking. The lesson wasn't about strength. It was about command, obedience, and the application of wisdom.
The journey then approaches its climax at the Temple of the Templars.
In Conferata, where Petrus prepares his farewell, he confesses that guiding the protagonist was his payment of dues, his first and only time as a guide. And he admits he only learned the true meaning of the RAM practices by teaching them.
And here's the core secret of the entire tradition, the ultimate lesson of mastery.
You can learn only through teaching. Petrus says that to become a true master, the protagonist has to accept his role and guide someone else. True knowledge isn't hoarded, it's consolidated through sharing.
He leaves him with one final instruction, RAM Practice 9, the dance exercise.
Right, which is about communicating with the infinite intelligence through spontaneous, whole-body movement. It's a celebration of life and knowledge, the final integration of body, mind, and spirit.
Following this, the protagonist continues alone, racked by doubt, focusing only on where his sword is.
He's reviewing his entire journey, talking out loud to a strain, his messenger, trying to find that missing piece, and then the revelation finally explodes into clarity.
The secret of the sword.
It wasn't about where the sword was or even how to use it. It was that he had only ever asked where the sword was.
Never what he needed it for.
That's the entire point of the 7-month delay, the whole grueling journey. The sword, the power, it's worthless without a purpose. The secret was what he should do with the power.
This shift in focus, from external reward to internal purpose, is instantaneous. The sources say his certainty causes the road to Santiago to walk him.
It's like finding perfect balance on a bicycle. Intuition and agape just take over. And led by instinct, literally following a lamb, he climbs the final slopes to El Sombrero.
He finds a pre-existing cross there, and his final prayer is this culmination of his rebirth.
He says, "I am not nailed to this cross, nor do I see you there. The cross is empty. A God is now reborn within me."
And the quest culminates in the small chapel there. He finds the relics from his trance, the chalice and paten, and his master is waiting, holding the sword.
The master confers the sword by pointing the blade upward, reciting the Psalm of Victory. He touches the blade to the protagonist's shoulders, confirming his worthiness. He receives the sword not as an object of pride, but as an instrument of service.
And as the ritual ends, the final miracle occurs, reflecting the inner transformation. The water of life, the rain that had been absent for the whole drought-stricken journey, begins to fall in heavy torrents,
Replenishing the dry land. He is worthy, not because he performed the steps, but because he finally knows what he must do with the power.
What really seals this for me, what proves the internal shift, is the abrupt end to his physical journey.
Yes. Having received his sword and understood its secret, he immediately catches the bus from a nearby town to Santiago de Compostela.
A 150-kilometer jump that covers in 4 hours what had just taken him 2 weeks of grueling effort.
He's physically abandoning the process because the lesson is over. His focus has shifted entirely from the struggle of the journey to the application of the reward. He has the sword, and he has a clear purpose.
So what are the crucial takeaways for you, the learner, from this journey? It seems the ultimate power found on the road wasn't some, esoteric magic.
Not at all. It was the consistent, practical, and often uncomfortable discipline of the RAM practices. This is a framework for confronting your internal enemies: fear, self-cruelty, goal obsession, spiritual stasis.
The sword itself was just a placeholder. The true conquest was internal, realizing that power and wisdom are universally accessible, provided you're willing to apply practical tools to overcome those 3 symptoms of killing your dreams.
Lack of time, the false certainties, and settling for a stagnant peace.
And if we generalize the master's mandate, it's a lesson for anyone, really. True mastery is achieved not when you know the information, but when you step into the role of the guide.
True knowledge isn't consolidated until you share it. The protagonist's next step to become a true master is to become the guide and lead someone else down that road.
It's a powerful, actionable cycle. The master stated, even if you become a master, you have to realize that your road is only one of many that lead to God.
So if the ultimate wisdom, that fusion of agape and purpose, is accessible to the common people through practical application and enthusiasm, The real question becomes,
What fundamental core purpose are you ready to apply to your own conquest today, and who are you ready to teach? Think about that as you continue your own journey.